I'm Emily Carter, 34 years old, a web developer living in Portland, Oregon. This morning, I woke up to 31 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. My chest tightened. Just like that, I was 12 again, standing alone at a dusty Amtrak platform in Fresno, California, watching my parents' SUV disappear down the road as they laughed. "Let's see if she can figure it out," my mother had called out. They thought it was funny. I didn't. That moment fractured something in me I spent years trying to put back together. I never looked back until now. Somehow, they found me. But before I explain how I was abandoned and how I rebuilt my life from that trauma drop, a comment sharing where you're tuning in from, and don't forget to hit subscribe if you've ever had to create your own family from scratch. Growing up in Canyon Hills, California was like living a double life. To our neighbors, we were a charming family. Stephen and Michelle Barrett, proud owners of a cozy coffee house, downtown with their 2 kids, my older brother Lucas and me, the quiet one in the corner. But once the cafe lights dimmed, our home became a place of volatility. My father, Stephen, was the town's beloved storyteller, always ready with a joke and a free coffee. But once the front door closed, the smile faded and the whiskey bottle came out. My mom, Michelle Sweet, to outsiders sugar cookies, always cooling on the counter, enabled his every outburst. "Your father just had a long day," she'd say, brushing off the slammed doors and the silent treatments. Their version of parenting tough love. Except it wasn't love. It was punishment wrapped in gaslighting. At age 8, I asked for $1 to buy stickers at the craft store. They left me there saying, "If you want things, learn to wait." I waited for almost 2 hours in the parking lot. A security guard finally offered me a phone. My mom eventually returned, chuckling. "See, you're not hurt." Lucas, 4 years older, never saw that side. He was the golden boy varsity soccer honor roll. Dad's shadow on camping trips. He could do no wrong. I was held to impossible standards. A 95% got me a scolding. Lucas brought home B's and got ice cream. I was never the daughter they wanted. But I've learned to become the woman I needed. If anything went wrong somehow, it was my fault. If the lasagna was overbaked, I must have distracted Mom. If Dad came home grumbling, maybe it was because he stayed up helping me with my science project. That kind of blame sinks in deep when you're a child. But what's etched in my mind, like it happened yesterday? My 11th birthday. Mom had promised a small party, just a few friends' balloons and the cupcakes we baked together the night before. I'd been counting down all week. That morning, she smiled strangely and said plans had changed, we were going to Suncrest Adventure Park instead. It sounded fun, so I tried not to show my disappointment about the party. We drove almost an hour parked, and then they handed me a $20 bill. "Have fun, sweetheart," Dad said. "We'll be back at 5. I stood there frozen as they drove away. Too scared to get on the rides, I spent my birthday alone sitting near the front gate watching other families laugh, kids running around with cotton candy and stuffed animals. They came back at 7:00 p.m., not 5. I was scared, exhausted, and barely holding it together. "Just teaching you independence." Dad chuckled. "Besides, we had to go pick up your cake." There was no cake, no presents, no apology. And when I cried, I was ungrateful. These so-called jokes and lessons happened constantly, so I adapted. I went quiet, stayed late at the library, visited friends as often as I could, and I drew. Drawing was my refuge, my escape hatch. On paper, I built worlds where children were heard and love wasn't a performance, where parents didn't weaponize affection. The day before they left me at the train station still haunts me. I'd just gotten my report card all A's except 1 A- in science. I was proud. But to my dad, that minus was a scarlet letter. An A-, he thundered. "You're slipping." "You think that's good enough?" Mom added. "We don't raise average." That night, I heard them murmuring in the kitchen. "She needs to toughen up," Dad said. "She's too sensitive," Mom replied. "Maybe it's time for a real lesson." The next morning, they announced a surprise trip to San Francisco. Lucas wasn't coming football practice, just the 3 of us. It felt rare, even hopeful. I thought maybe they wanted to make things right. I couldn't have been more wrong. That morning, I woke up torn between hope and dread. Dad was unusually upbeat that morning, almost unnervingly so. He flipped pancakes, hummed to old rock tunes on the radio, and even tousled my hair like he used to when I was little. Mom was packing a cooler of sandwiches and chips, humming softly, her tone syrupy, sweet. The whole thing felt off, like they were reading lines from a script. The drive from Canyon Hills to San Francisco took a little over 3 hours. Dad kept the car filled with loud classic rock while Mom quizzed me on state trivia from the front seat. Every time I missed one, Dad would click his tongue and mutter, "Even a fourth grader knows Sacramento is the capital." I shrank into my seat, too polite to push back. Just as the Golden Gate Bridge came into view, Mom turned and looked at me oddly. "So, Alyssa," she said, tilting her head, "think you're pretty smart, huh?" I hesitated. I guess. I try hard in school." "Book smart," Dad said. "Not the same as real-world smart. Life doesn't hand you gold stars," Mom added cryptically, turning back around. A lump tightened in my stomach. Something wasn't right. We parked near the ferry building around noon. It was my first time in San Francisco. The size, the people, the noise, it overwhelmed me instantly. Crowds bustled past as we stepped into the wide terminal. The architecture, the echo of footsteps on tile, the smell of roasted coffee, it was all too much. Hungry, Dad asked. I nodded, clinging to the hope that maybe we were here for something fun, after all. "Great," Mom said. "Wait here by this column." She pointed to a concrete support beam near the main entrance. "We're going to move the car and grab lunch." "Can I come?" I asked, nerves rising. "What are you?" "5," Dad scoffed. "You're 12, but I don't know my way around?" "Exactly," Mom said, her smile tight. "Stay put. Don't move." I stood where they left me, heart thudding. The station clock read 12:14 p.m. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. Then 40. I scanned every face in the crowd, business travelers, kids holding balloons, a street musician playing violin, but no sign of them. I felt my throat close. An hour passed. I had no phone, no money. Just a sinking feeling that something terrible had happened. Or worse, that nothing had happened at all. They'd just left me. They hadn't left me any money for a payphone. Just $7 in my pocket, my weekly allowance I'd carefully saved for this trip. I stood by the pillar, clutching my backpack, when something outside the massive glass windows caught my eye. Our blue Ford Taurus. It rolled slowly past the front of the ferry building, just beyond the bustling street. My chest exploded with relief. They'd gotten lost or turned around. Maybe this really was just a misunderstanding. I ran toward the exit, waving both arms frantically. Dad was behind the wheel. He looked right at me and smiled. Not a smile of recognition, not relief, but a smirk, cold, deliberate. Mom was beside him, leaning slightly out of the window. "Let's see how you find your way home." "Genius!" she yelled. They laughed, both of them, then accelerated into traffic and disappeared. At first, I didn't move. I couldn't. My legs felt like cement. The realization hit like a punch they hadn't left me on accident. They did it on purpose. In a city I'd never seen before, hours from home, they left me. Panic replaced hope. I darted back inside, breath-shallow tears already falling. The once grand terminal now felt like a labyrinth of noise and strangers. Too many faces, too many directions. I was completely and utterly alone. No phone, no ID, no one to call. I walked aimlessly for nearly 2 hours, my $17 clutched like a lifeline. I stopped near the restroom to cry, then wandered through the food court pretending to look for someone. But there was no one. Only the cold echo of their laughter replaying in my mind. I was terrified to ask for help. My parents had drilled it into me, never talk to strangers, especially not the police. "Cops take away bad kids," Dad used to say. "Kids who whine too much." At around 3:30 p.m., someone noticed. A woman, mid-60s maybe, with silver-streaked hair pulled into a bun and warm, red-framed glasses. Her name tag read, Janet. She worked at the station cafe. She knelt beside me and gently asked, "Sweetheart, Are you lost? I shook my head automatically, the lie already forming. They went to move the car, I said, voice trembling. When was that? She asked softly. I couldn't answer. My lip quivered, and before I could stop it, 3 hours of fear and heartbreak came pouring out. They left me, I sobbed. They drove away and said to find my way home. But home is in Canyon Hills. Janet's expression shifted from concern to something sharper alarm. She gently took my arm and led me to a quieter area near the station's administrative wing where the noise of the crowd faded behind thick glass doors. She handed me a bottle of water and crouched down beside me. Just take your time, sweetheart. Tell me what happened. Through hiccuping sobs, I managed to explain the family trip, the A-, the moment I saw my parents drive away, waving and laughing like it was all a joke. What's your name? She asked softly. Alyssa. Alyssa Barrett. And how old are you, Alyssa? 12. Janet's warm eyes briefly hardened, her lips pressing into a thin line. Then she exhaled and nodded. What you just described? That's not okay. It's not even close. She called over a supervisor who immediately brought in station security. A gentle, soft-spoken officer named Marcus sat beside me and asked more questions. Our home address in Canyon Hills, our phone number, my school's name. I could see them exchanging glances above my head. Quiet, grim looks that confirmed what I was starting to fear. We need to notify the police, Marcus finally said. What your parents did, it's abandonment. And that's illegal. By 4:45 p.m., I was sitting in a small office near the back of the ferry building watching Officer Teresa Ramirez fill out a formal report. I sat frozen in my seat, my brain still trying to convince me this wasn't really happening. Parents don't do this. Not real parents. But mine had. The drive to the San Francisco Police Department's Southern Station took less than 10 minutes. I was wrapped in a borrowed fleece blanket, even though it wasn't cold. Officer Ramirez stayed with me, offering kind words and a cup of hot chocolate while she typed up the rest of the incident. We've tried calling your home number twice, she said, her tone gentle but firm. No answer yet. Maybe they're still driving, I whispered, clinging to a sliver of false hope. It's a long way back to Canyon Hills. Maybe, she said, but her tone told me she didn't believe they were coming back. The station looked nothing like I expected. No bars, no yelling, just phones ringing and people typing. Still knowing I was here because my own parents had left me broke something inside. Alyssa, a new voice called. A woman with curly brown hair approached, holding a slim folder. I'm Laura Donovan from Child Protective Services. I'd like to talk with you a bit, okay? The next hour blurred into quiet questions. Had they done this before? Yes, just never this far. Did they ever hit you? Laura's voice was calm, but I could feel the weight of her question. No, I replied quickly. Not physically. Did you feel safe at home? I paused. Too long. She didn't press me for more. The silence said enough. What's going to happen to me tonight? I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Laura gently explained that since my parents couldn't be reached, I'd be placed in emergency foster care just for the night until things could be sorted out. The words foster care made my stomach twist. I'd heard the stories cold beds mean strangers' kids getting bounced from house to house. But Laura must have seen the panic in my eyes. The Williams family is one of our most trusted homes, she assured me. They've worked with us for years. They even have a daughter about your age. By 9:00 p.m., I was sitting at the Williams dining table, staring down at a plate of spaghetti I couldn't touch. Diane and Robert Williams were kind, speaking to me gently, as though afraid I might shatter. Their daughter Alicia, maybe 13, showed me to the guest room and offered me some of her pajamas and a fresh toothbrush. Your parents will probably come tomorrow, she said with an uncertain smile. I nodded, but I didn't believe it. That night, I lay on the unfamiliar bed, staring up at the ceiling fan. My mind replayed the image of the Ford Taurus driving away, their laughter trailing behind them. What kind of parents do that? What had I done to deserve it? The next morning, I barely touched my cereal. Laura arrived mid-morning, and the look on her face told me everything before she said a word. We reached your parents last night, she said carefully. Are they coming? Not yet, she replied. They said they were teaching you a lesson about independence, problem solving. Hot tears blurred my vision. By leaving me in another city, they claimed they were going to call the station after a few hours, but once the police got involved, things escalated. Translation. They weren't planning to call anyone, Laura continued. Your brother Lucas was told to expect you home yesterday. He was shocked when your parents came back without you. So Lucas hadn't known. A small relief in a sea of betrayal. What happens now? There's a meeting at our office tomorrow. Your parents will be there. A judge has been notified. There will be a hearing later this week. The next 36 hours passed like a dream. The Williams family was kind, but I felt like a ghost, just floating, waiting. The meeting at the Department of Children and Family Services office was scheduled for 2 p.m. Monday. I changed back into my wrinkled jeans and hoodie, freshly washed and dried by Diane, though still holding the scent of someone else's home. Laura drove me downtown to a beige government building tucked between office towers. You don't have to speak to your parents if you're not ready, she reassured me. I'll be right there the entire time. We were led into a plain conference room with a long table and buzzing fluorescent lights. Already seated were Laura's supervisor, a sharp-eyed woman in a navy blazer, and a family court liaison with a thick folder in front of him. 5 minutes later, the door opened. My parents walked in, looking nothing like the people who had laughed and waved as they abandoned me in San Francisco. Dad's face was pale and tense. Mom's mascara was smudged, her eyes rimmed red. A man in a gray suit followed behind them. I'm Mr. Halpern, legal counsel for the Barretts, he said, shaking hands. Alyssa, Mom said softly, stepping toward me. I flinched before I could stop myself. Please take your seats, Laura's supervisor instructed firmly. What followed was the most surreal conversation of my life. With their attorney guiding them, my parents calmly presented their version of events. They claimed they were worried about my dependency and wanted to test my real-world readiness. The station incident, they said, was a controlled experiment. They claimed to have circled the block after 20 minutes, unable to find me. Dad insisted they thought I'd figure out how to call home. She's smart, he said. We expected her to rise to the challenge. It was a lesson in resilience, Mom added. A lesson, Laura's supervisor asked, incredulous. You left your 12-year-old in a major city, hours from home, with no phone, no ID, and $7. She's exaggerating, Mom muttered. There are phones everywhere. She could have called collect. I sat frozen. They weren't apologizing. They didn't regret it. They believed this was parenting. The meeting shifted to legal concerns, possible charges, court hearings, child welfare statutes. But through it all, they stood by their story. This was an intentional test done out of love. When I was asked if I wanted to return home, something in me finally cracked open. No, I said clearly. I don't want to go back. The look on their faces, shock, betrayal, confusion. Don't be ridiculous, Dad snapped. Of course you're coming home. That's not your decision right now, Laura's supervisor replied coldly. Given the circumstances, Taylor, the court liaison, explained gently, Alyssa will remain in temporary custody while the court continues to evaluate the situation. The words made my mother stiffen. She stood and tried once more to approach me. Alyssa, sweetheart, you're blowing this out of proportion, she said, voice trembling. We were just trying to teach you a lesson. To abandon someone who trusts you. I interrupted, my voice cracking as tears streamed down my face. That's what I learned. Laura's hand rested lightly on my shoulder as she guided me toward the door. Behind me, my parents' protests blended into the background hum of fluorescent lights and rustling paper. I didn't look back. I knew even then that I would never see our house in Canyon Hills as home again. The weeks that followed blurred together. Court dates, interviews with social workers, therapy sessions with a woman named Renee who had kind eyes and never asked questions I wasn't ready to answer. The Williams family continued to care for me during this limbo, but their home always felt like a waiting room. Safe, but not mine. Then, One Tuesday afternoon, exactly a month after the ferry building, I met David and Elena Carter. They arrived at the DCFS office with calm, open smiles that reached their eyes. David, an art teacher, wore paint-speckled glasses. Sarah, a pediatric nurse, had gentle hands and a motherly tone that didn't feel forced. "We believe every child deserves safety, respect, and room to grow," Sarah said as we sat in the meeting room with Grace Chin, my new social worker. "No pressure," David added. "You don't have to talk until you're ready. We just want you to know our home is open." Something about them, maybe their quiet steadiness, chipped through the emotional armor I'd built. When Grace asked if I'd be willing to try a placement with them, I nodded. The Millers lived in a modest two-story house in Evanston, just north of Chicago. My room had pale yellow walls, a window seat overlooking a garden, and bookshelves that Sarah said I could fill however I liked. "We want this to feel like yours." She smiled, handing me a soft blanket. "What are the rules?" I asked, bracing myself. "Basic respect," David replied. "Let us know where you are. Help out, try your best in school. We'll figure the rest out together." I waited for the catch, the hidden consequences. But they never came. The first time I spilled juice at dinner, I flinched. Sarah handed me a cloth. "No worries, Alyssa. Accidents happen." I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop for David and Elena Carter to suddenly reveal the cruelty I'd been trained to expect from adults. But they never did. Day after day, their kindness stayed steady, quiet, genuine. Meanwhile, the legal process trudged forward. Grace kept me updated with each court filing. My parents were ordered to attend parenting classes and counseling sessions. According to Grace, they made what she diplomatically called minimal effort. They blamed the system, calling it a witch hunt over a misunderstood parenting choice. But Dr. Lawson, my therapist, helped me see the truth. Abandonment, emotional abuse, neglect. She said the words out loud without hesitation. She diagnosed me with PTSD and anxiety, then taught me coping tools that actually helped: deep breathing, grounding exercises, journal prompts I could do without fear of being judged. For the first time in my life, someone told me the truth. "What they did wasn't your fault, Alyssa. Nothing you could have done would have made it okay." I didn't believe her at first. But slowly, I started to. 3 months into living with the Millers, Lucas came to visit. Now, 16, he looked older, but also smaller. No longer the invincible golden child, just a teenage boy unsure of his footing. We sat stiffly in the Millers' living room. Sarah kept herself busy in the kitchen, close enough to intervene, but giving us space. Lucas stared at his hands. "They miss you," he said. "Do they?" I asked. "In their way," he admitted. "Dad's drinking more. Mom cleans like she's trying to erase something." "Are they sorry?" He paused. "They're sorry you're gone, but I don't think they understand why it was wrong." "And you?" I asked, searching his face. "I knew they were harder on you," he said quietly. "I should have said something. I'm sorry, Alyssa. It wasn't enough. But it was honest." We talked for nearly an hour, tiptoeing around old wounds. As he left, he hugged me clumsily and whispered, "I'm glad you're safe." We wouldn't speak again for years. 6 months after they left me at the ferry building, the court case finally concluded. The judge reviewed psychological reports, home visits, and my own testimony. The verdict was clear: a documented pattern of emotional abuse and severe neglect. My parents were given a choice: complete a 2-year rehabilitative program with supervised visitation or surrender their parental rights. To no one's surprise, but the courts, they chose the latter. "We won't be vilified for raising a strong, independent daughter," my father said with smug defiance. But I wasn't his daughter anymore. If the state thinks it can do better, let it try. That was the last thing my father said in court. And just like that, with the stroke of a pen, Stephen and Michelle Barrett were no longer legally my parents. 3 months later, on the morning of my 13th birthday, David and Elena Carter sat across from me at the breakfast table, a small, wrapped gift between them. "Alyssa," Elena said softly, "we wanted to ask, would you like us to adopt you?" By then, their care no longer felt like a shelter. It felt like a home. Their kindness hadn't wavered, not even once. I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. The adoption was finalized just before I turned 15. As part of the process, I made a choice I thought about for over a year. I requested a legal name change from Alyssa Barrett to Emily Carter. A new name for a new life, I told Elena nervously. You'll always be whoever you want to be in our home, she replied, tears in her eyes. We're just honored to be part of your story. Those years were transformative, and art became my refuge. David recognized my talent early. He bought me sketchbooks, taught me shading techniques, and encouraged me to draw my feelings when words failed. My first notebooks were filled with jagged lines and shadowed corners. Over time, color returned. Light emerged. Hope in charcoal and watercolor. High school wasn't without challenges. Making friends didn't come naturally. Trust was a long, winding road. But slowly, I found my circle, a group of quiet creatives in the art room who embraced my silences and understood the weight I carried. By junior year, the idea of college came into focus. With David and Elena's help, I set my sights on something bold, the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. It's ambitious, I admitted. Not impossible, David said, and wherever you want to go, we'll help you get there. The acceptance letter arrived on a snowy March afternoon. Elena cried. David framed it. And for the first time, I let myself believe the future could truly be mine. Before I left, I made a quiet but final decision. I would cut all ties with my birth parents. No contact, no updates, no loose ends, I told Elena. Are you sure? She asked gently. I'm sure, I said. The Barretts are my past. You're my family now. With that, I stepped into my future. College was everything I dreamed, messy, vibrant, and alive with possibility. And I was finally free to grow. If you believe no child should have to earn love and want to see how Emily's journey unfolds, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next. My first semester at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago was overwhelming, but exhilarating. I declared a major in graphic design, finding joy in the harmony of color layout and messaging. Every successful project restored pieces of confidence that had been stripped away in childhood, one critique at a time. David and Elena Carter supported me from a distance, never overstepping. Care packages arrived during midterms, granola bars, hand warmers, and handwritten notes. They let me explore my independence, but always reminded me that their home in Evanston was still mine whenever I needed it. That kind of steady love was something I never knew growing up. In sophomore year, I met Stephanie in a color theory class. She was loud where I was quiet, her work full of wild brushstrokes and vibrant neon hues. We couldn't have been more different yet. Somehow it worked. You're the most careful artist I've ever met, she told me over coffee one afternoon. Is that bad? I asked, already bracing. Not bad, she said, eyes kind. Just interesting. Makes me wonder what happens when you let go. Stephanie became my anchor and my spark. She challenged me to take risks in art and gently nudged me toward opening up in life. When I finally told her parts of my past, she didn't recoil or fawn. They really screwed up, she said simply. Losing someone like you. It was Stephanie who first suggested I try dating. Until then, I'd kept everyone at arm's length. You don't have to trust everyone, she said. Just maybe try trusting someone. That someone turned out to be Michael, a photography major with quiet confidence and a warm laugh. We met at a student show, and our first coffee date turned into 5 hours of laughter stories and shared silences that didn't feel awkward. He told me about growing up on a dairy farm in rural Wisconsin, his sisters, and his love for vintage cameras. I told him a carefully worded version of my history. My birth parents weren't good people, I admitted. I was adopted when I was 13. Michael didn't flinch. Family's complicated, he said. I care more about who you are now. We took things slow. When he reached for my hand once, and I instinctively pulled away, he didn't make it weird, just kept talking, giving me space. The next time, I didn't flinch. Dr. Lawson had prepared me for this, that trauma leaks into everything, especially love. Awareness, she'd said, is the key. It was that awareness that held me steady when Michael and I hit our first real conflict 8 months in. A simple miscommunication about dinner plans left me waiting alone at a quiet cafe near campus for over an hour. By the time Michael arrived, breathless, apologizing about a dead phone battery, I was locked in the bathroom, hyperventilating in a stall. "You left me," I whispered later, the words trembling but sharp. It wasn't about dinner. The phrase carried the weight of a childhood abandonment I still couldn't always contain. That train station that day, it lived in the background of everything. For the first time, I told Michael the full story. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to fix it. When I finished, he simply said, "I can't promise I'll never let you down, but I can promise I'll never walk away on purpose. And I'll always, always come back." It didn't erase my pain, but it honored it. Our relationship deepened in that moment of honesty. Vulnerability built a stronger foundation than perfection ever could. As graduation approached, I felt both eager and afraid. The safety net of school was fading, and the unknown loomed. Thanks to a recommendation from my typography professor, I landed an interview at Element Design, a mid-sized branding firm known for its work with nonprofits and eco-conscious startups. "We like your portfolio," the creative director told me, flipping through my printed samples. "But more than that, we like how you think. There's empathy in your work. That can't be taught." 2 weeks after graduation, I started at Element. I moved into a small studio apartment 20 minutes from the office, painted the walls a soft blue, and hung my sketches beside vintage prints and Stephanie's latest collage. I even bought a few plants, small stubborn things that needed just enough care to keep me grounded. The design work. That part came naturally. Presenting to clients, defending creative concepts. Not so much. But Nadia, my supervisor, had a sixth sense for when I needed encouragement. "Your work already speaks for itself," she said after one particularly shaky presentation. "Now it's time to let you speak for it." And she was right. Confidence came slowly but surely. By the time I was 27, I was leading full campaigns. That same year, during a weekend visit to David and Elena's house, Michael proposed. He'd asked them first, not out of tradition, but because he understood they were my true parents. We married in a small spring ceremony. Stephanie stood by me in a sunflower yellow dress. David walked me down the aisle. During our mother-daughter dance, Elena whispered, "You've built something beautiful, Emily." And for the first time, I truly believed it. "We built it together," I corrected softly, hugging Elena, the woman who had redefined motherhood for me. Around that time, my birth parents attempted to make contact for the first time in years. A Facebook message from Michelle popped up on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday afternoon. "Emily, we've been thinking about you. Would love to reconnect. Your dad and I are still in Canyon Hills." I stared at the message for hours, hands trembling. The name alone sent a chill through me. I showed it to Michael, then brought it to my next session with Dr. Lawson. With their steady support, I made my decision. The boundary I'd set years ago still stood. I blocked the account without replying. When similar messages appeared on Instagram and LinkedIn in the following months, I did the same. The attempts unsettled me, but I refused to let them unravel the life I'd fought to build. Instead, I poured that emotional energy into something new. At 28, I left Element Design to start my own studio, Carter & Co., focused on branding for nonprofits supporting children and families in crisis. The name honored the family that had lifted me out of darkness and helped me find my voice. We started in the spare bedroom of our apartment. Michael supported the leap without hesitation. His work as a commercial photographer gave us stability when the business was just gaining traction. We talked about kids, but agreed to revisit it once the studio was stable. The thought of parenthood stirred a deep mix of hope and fear in me. What if I couldn't break the cycle? "You're not them," Dr. Lawson reminded me gently. "The fact that you're asking these questions already proves that." Eventually, our apartment gave way to a small house in Rogers Park, complete with space for home offices and a guest room for visiting family. The day we moved in, Michael surprised me with a rescue dog, a one-eyed mutt with matted fur and gentle eyes. "Thought you two might understand each other," he said as Finn explored cautiously. He was right. Finn and I bonded instantly. His quiet loyalty and eager joy filled a corner of my heart I didn't know was still hurting. Morning walks became part of my healing. Watching him sniff flowers, greet neighbors, and nap by my desk reminded me how far I'd come. With each passing year, my life felt more rooted. Carter and Cobra thrived. My marriage deepened. My relationship with David and Elena grew into the kind of adult connection I'd once believed was impossible. And with Michael's family, I found even more love, unconditional, judgment-free. Despite, or perhaps because of my past, I had created something stable, something whole. The memories never vanished, but their grip had loosened, eroded by every conscious choice to live differently than I was raised. That is, until this morning. My phone lit up 29 missed calls from an unfamiliar number with a California area code. I stared frozen, a digital breach from a past I had long buried. My thumb hovered over the voicemail icon, heartbeat thudding against my ribs. Finn sensed something was wrong. He pressed his warm body against my shin-tail, still but ears alert. The golden morning light streamed through the kitchen windows, casting soft shadows across my coffee mug, half-eaten toast, and open laptop. A normal morning until it wasn't. I pressed play. Emily? Or, I guess it's Alyssa to you. It's Lucas, your brother. I know it's been years, and you probably don't want to hear from any of us. But Dad had a heart attack last night. It's bad. The doctors don't know if he's going to make it. I thought you should know. My number is... I ended the message before he finished. My hands shook so violently I dropped the phone. Finn whimpered, nudging my palm with his nose. I'm okay, I whispered, but I wasn't. Within minutes more, messages appeared. An email from a vaguely familiar address. Subject line, your father, please read. A Facebook message request. Emily, it's Mom. Please call. It's urgent. 20 years of silence, and now this flurry of digital pleas. Why? Now? What did they want from me? The panic attack hit hard fast. My chest constricted, breath came in gasps, and the walls seemed to shrink around me. I hadn't had one this intense in years. Fumbling for my phone again, I called Dr. Lawson's office. By some miracle, she had an opening that morning. Sitting in her familiar office, clutching a tissue, I tried to breathe. This is a normal response, she assured me, her voice calm. This touches your core trauma. I don't get it, I admitted. I made peace with cutting them off. Years ago, did you? She asked gently. Or did you build a life around the absence of that peace? The question hit harder than expected. Had I healed or just buried the hurt beneath success, safety, and structure? What do I do now? I asked quietly. That depends, Dr. Lawson said. There's no right answer here, Emily. Only what's true for you. And just like that, I was no longer sure what that was. You can hold the boundary, Dr. Lawson had said. That's entirely valid. Or if there's something you need, you can engage on your terms. What would I even need from them, I'd asked. Only you can answer that, she replied gently. Closure, clarity. A chance to speak your truth, or simply confirmation that leaving was the right choice. I left her office not with answers, but with tools, breathing exercises, grounding reminders, and a calm inner voice I'd worked hard to build. Back home, I called the two people who had earned the right to guide me through a family crisis. Elena answered after 2 rings. Emily. What a lovely surprise. The sound of her voice undid me. I broke down again, tears catching in my throat as I told her everything. The call, the message, the missed years crashing into this single moment. Oh, sweetheart, she whispered when I finished. What can we do? Tell me what to do, I pleaded. You know we can't do that, she said gently. But whatever you choose, David, and I support you completely. Your connection to them, or lack thereof, doesn't change anything with us. You're ours. After we hung up, I texted Stephanie. She showed up an hour later, wine in hand, despite the early afternoon. Okay, she said, sitting at my kitchen table. Let's game this out. What's the worst that happens if you respond? They could try to pull me back into their dysfunction, I said. Guilt me. Deny everything. Gaslight me. Or just re-traumatize me. And if you don't respond, I might always wonder, I admitted. Maybe regret not saying what I needed to say. So it's not about them, Stephanie observed. It's about you, what you need. That evening when Michael came home, He found me surrounded by notes and diagrams, medical articles, printouts, a literal flowchart of outcomes. My graphic designer brain was trying to systematize something deeply emotional. "I see someone's been busy?" He smiled, kissing the top of my head. "I need to know if this is real, if it's a true emergency or manipulation," I said quietly. "And if it is manipulation, then I need to be prepared." "It's not cold to think that," Michael said. "It's smart. You're protecting yourself." We talked late into the night about family trauma, legacy, and freedom. Michael had never met my birth family, but he'd lived in the shadow of their absence. "This isn't about what you owe," he said softly. "It's about what will help you move forward." By morning, I had my answer. I wouldn't call, I wouldn't visit, but I sent Lucas a single message. "This is Emily. I got your message. I got your message about Dad. I need more information before deciding my next steps. How serious is his condition? What exactly do you and Mom expect from me?" I hit send and waited, my fingers twitching with nerves. Lucas replied within minutes. "Thank you for responding. It was a major heart attack. He's stable but critical. Triple bypass scheduled tomorrow. Mom's a mess. We don't expect anything, just thought you should know. Totally understand if you want no part of this." The sincerity surprised me. For the first time in years, his tone didn't feel like an echo of our parents. "I need time to think," I replied. "We'll be in touch." The next 3 days were heavy with introspection. I walked Finn for miles, journaled obsessively, spoke with Dr. Lawson, and leaned on Michael and Elena as sounding boards. In the end, I made my decision. I would meet Lucas and only Lucas at a neutral location to better understand what I was walking into before considering any contact with Stephen or Michelle. We agreed on a coffee shop in Oak Brook, about halfway between Rogers Park and Lucas's suburb. Seeing him after 2 decades felt surreal. The lanky teenager I remembered now stood before me as a middle-aged man with thinning hair, glasses, and a rumpled button-down. He rose awkwardly as I approached. "Emily," he said, voice soft. "Thank you for coming." I nodded stiffly, skipping the small talk. "Tell me about Dad." He exhaled in relief. "Triple bypass went well, but there were complications. He's still in ICU. How bad, the doctors are optimistic, but he's 68. High blood pressure, high cholesterol. Still drinks too much. He retired 5 years ago when all this started. Sold the store." I absorbed the facts mechanically, trying to reconcile the mythic figure of my childhood with this fragile reality. "And Mom falling apart," Lucas said. "They've been married 45 years. As messy as they are, they're glued together." "Are you close to them?" Lucas hesitated. "Yes and no. I live about an hour away. We talk. I see them once a month. My wife Nancy isn't their biggest fan." "Why not?" Another pause. "Then, after you left, things changed. Or maybe I just started seeing them more clearly." I looked at him, unsure of what I felt. Pity, resentment, kinship. Maybe all three. "They never really took responsibility for what happened with you," Lucas admitted. "They told a lot of stories to themselves, to extended family, to anyone who asked. But over time, especially after I had kids, I couldn't keep pretending." I stared at him, my coffee cooling untouched. "What did they tell people about me?" I asked, dreading the answer, but needing it anyway. "At first, that you were staying in Chicago for school opportunities. Later, that you became rebellious, ungrateful, that you cut them off despite their best efforts." I closed my eyes, a sharp pang rising in my chest. "Most people believed them," he added. "They're good at sounding like victims. And you let them." His gaze dropped. "Yes, for years I did." I said nothing, waiting. I was 18, just starting college. It was easier to accept their version than face the truth. I'm not proud of that. His honesty caught me off guard. I softened, but only slightly. "So why now?" I asked. "Why reach out after all this time just because Dad's sick?" "Partly," he said, "but also, my daughter Emma turned 12 last month. The age you were when it happened." He paused, voice tightening. "Watching her grow up made me realize how wrong it all was. The idea of anyone doing to her what they did to you." He shook his head, unable to finish. "We talked for almost 2 hours. He told me about his life as an accountant, his wife Nancy, their 2 kids. He answered my questions about our parents with painful honesty, neither excusing their actions nor exaggerating them. Have they ever expressed real remorse? I asked. Not regret that I left, but actual understanding in bits and pieces, he said. Dad, when drinking, has said he wishes things had gone differently, that he went too far. And Mom, she struggles more, still insists they were trying to toughen you up. But they've both asked about you over the years. He hesitated. They keep a photo of you, your high school portrait on the mantel. I shivered. A static version of me frozen in their home, while the real me had grown into someone they didn't know at all. Would you consider visiting Dad in the hospital? Lucas asked softly. You don't have to talk. I can make sure Mom isn't there. I stared at him conflicted. I need to think about it. Of course, he nodded. And Emily, whatever you decide, it's okay. You don't owe any of us anything. As we stood, he extended his hand. I took it. The contact was brief, strange, but undeniably real. A tether to a past I hadn't touched in 20 years. That night, I told Michael everything Lucas's request, my hesitation and what seeing my father might dredge up. He listened carefully, holding my hand as I spoke. I think I'm going to do it, I said finally, but on my terms. Then, that's the only way to do it, Michael replied. Just remember, you're not that powerless 12-year-old anymore, Emily. You can walk in and walk right back out. You're in control now. The next morning, I called Dr. Lawson and asked if she would accompany me to the hospital, not as my therapist, but as someone who understood the weight of what I was about to do. She agreed without hesitation. This is an opportunity to engage with your past from a position of strength, she said. But only if it's what you truly want. I pictured the scared girl at the ferry building sobbing beside a concrete pillar. Then I thought of the life I had built since David and Elena Michael Finn, my work, my healing. Yes, I said. I think I need to do this. Not for them. For me. The walk down the hospital corridor felt endless. The fluorescent lights, the antiseptic scent, the soft murmur of nurses and machines. It all collided with my nervous system. Every step took effort. If you need to pause, Dr. Lawson said gently, we can. I shook my head. If I stop, I might never make it to that room. Lucas stood just outside the cardiac ICU, relief clear on his face when he saw us. Thank you for coming, he said. He's awake, but weak. Mom's in the cafeteria. I made sure she wouldn't be here just like you asked, and she agreed to that. I asked warily. He grimaced. Not exactly. I told her we needed to discuss insurance. I introduced Dr. Lawson as a close friend. Lucas didn't question it. As we neared the room, he touched my elbow lightly. Just so you're ready, he looks different. Older, of course, and post-op. It's a lot. I nodded. No preparation could have truly readied me. There he was. Stephen Barrett, the towering presence from my childhood, now small gray, diminished in a sea of tubes and monitors. A nasal cannula framed his face, and bandages peeked beneath his gown. His eyes were closed when we entered. Then slowly they fluttered open. At first, blank confusion. Then recognition. His eyes widened. His lips parted. Alyssa, he whispered, voice dry and rasping. My old name spoken like a ghost. It's Emily now, I corrected automatically. Emily, he repeated slowly as if trying the name on for size. You came. I stayed near the doorway, my arms folded across my chest. Yes. Silence stretched between us, the kind that only decades of absence can forge. 20 years of pain and unanswered questions crowded the hospital room, pushing at the sterile walls. You look like your mother, he said at last. I look like Elena Carter, I replied firmly. My mother. His face twitched, tightened for a moment, before slipping into something that resembled acceptance. Of course. I deserved that. Dr. Lawson stood behind me, her presence steady and grounding. Lucas hovered near the edge of the bed, unsure whether to stay or go. I locked eyes with my father. Why did you want to see me? I asked. If I was going to be here, I needed clarity and control. Stephen looked startled by the directness. You're my daughter. I was your daughter, I corrected. Until you left me in a strange city to find my own way home at 12. He winced, visibly shaken. We made a mistake, he said quietly. A terrible mistake. A mistake, I echoed. A mistake is locking your keys in the car. A mistake is forgetting a birthday. What you and Michelle did was planned. It was cruelty dressed up as discipline. My voice didn't waver. The years of therapy, the midnight journaling, the quiet rebuilding of my life, it had prepared me for this confrontation. You're right, he murmured. There's no excuse. I've had a lot of time to think. Especially now. He gestured weakly toward the monitors and tubes surrounding him. When you're staring down the end, you start to see the truth. You see the damage. Are you dying? I asked bluntly. Not today, he said with a dry chuckle. But this was a warning shot, and it makes a man reflect on his regrets. So I'm a regret. What we did to you is my biggest regret, he said. You never. It was the closest thing to an apology I had ever heard from either of them. But even that sincere, as it may have been, felt small next to the weight of what had happened. Just then, the door swung open. Michelle Barrett stood frozen in the entrance, a hospital coffee in her hand, staring at me like I'd stepped out of a photograph. Alyssa, she whispered. It's Emily? Lucas said quickly. I turned slowly to face the woman who had given birth to me and laughed as she drove away from a crying child. My voice was steady. Hello, Mom. At 65, Michelle Barrett still looked impeccably polished, her auburn hair clearly dyed foundation, carefully applied, even here in the fluorescent sterility of a hospital. She wore fitted slacks and a structured blouse, looking more like she'd just left a country club than her husband's ICU room. Only her eyes betrayed her age and the weight of the situation. I told you I was arranging a different time, Lucas said apologetically, turning toward me. It's fine, I said though. My body screamed otherwise. The trembling in my hands, the rising pressure in my chest, I hadn't planned for both of them to be in the same room. Not like this. Michelle stepped toward me, arms half raised like she might hug me. But when I instinctively stepped back, she let them fall. You're so beautiful, she whispered, tears glistening. All grown up. I said nothing. I hadn't braced for her presence. Her voice, her scent, still the same perfume. I stood still, every muscle locked. I've thought about you every day, she continued. Wondered if you were safe, if you were happy, if you ever thought of us. Michelle Stephen warned weakly from the bed. Give her space. The irony of Stephen Barrett, the man who abandoned me, suddenly advocating for boundaries, wasn't lost on me. I need some air, I muttered. Dr. Lawson immediately rose beside me. Please don't go, Michelle called out behind me. Please, we've missed you. I paused in the doorway. My spine stiffened. I turned to face them. You missed me? My voice cracked. You left me alone in a city I didn't know. At 12. No phone, no money. I watched the car drive away, with you both laughing. Michelle gasped. Her hands flew to her face. You surrendered your rights, I continued. You refused to admit what you did. And now, after 20 years, you talk about missing me. Tears streamed down her cheeks. We were terrible parents, she said softly. We didn't know how to love you, right? That's not an excuse, I replied. Plenty of people figure out how to love their kids without leaving them behind. Stephen coughed. She's right. There's no defense. We failed you. Completely. Their admission, a quiet, raw acknowledgement, disarmed me more than I expected. No defenses. No justification. Just failure, plainly stated. I didn't come for apologies, I said. I came to see you. To see if the people who controlled my life for so long were still larger than life. I looked between them. You're not. You're just people. And no, Michelle, there's no chance of reconciliation. That opportunity ended the moment you drove away from King Street Station. What I can offer is closure for all of us. I looked directly at Stephen in his hospital bed. I hope you recover fully from your surgery. I don't wish either of you harm, but I need you to understand that I am not Alyssa Barrett anymore. I haven't been for 20 years. I'm Emily Carter. I have loving adoptive parents, a devoted husband, a thriving design studio, and a life built far away from the pain you caused. My voice stayed calm. I don't hate you anymore. That took a long time. But I don't forgive you either, and I don't want you in my life. Any contact should go through Lucas, and I reserve the right to ignore it completely. The weight of my words hung heavy in the sterile room. Michelle wept silently while Stephen turned his face away, a tear escaping down his cheek. "We understand," he murmured. Dr. Lawson and I left soon after. In the parking lot, I took in the chilly Chicago air, letting it settle into my chest like relief. "You did beautifully," she said softly. "How are you feeling?" "Like I finally got to be the adult in the room," I replied. Like I reclaimed something they stole from me a long time ago. Over the following days, I processed the encounter through extra therapy sessions and long talks with Michael, Sarah, and David. The experience had drained me, but it also left me standing taller. I had faced them on my own terms and walked away whole. Lucas sent a few quiet updates on Stephen's condition. I responded with brief thanks, but held my boundary firm. I told him I was open to keeping in touch with him, but that any communication from our parents was unwelcome. A week later, I sat at my desk, deleting message after message, Michelle's daily emails, Stephen's missed calls. I blocked their numbers, blocked their accounts, and called Sarah. "I just wanted to say thank you," I told her, "for showing me what love should feel like." "Oh, sweetheart," she said warmly, "you've given us just as much in return." That evening, Michael and I took Finn for a walk through our quiet neighborhood. The air was golden, and fireflies danced near the trees. Michael reached for my hand. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. I smiled. "That the family you're born into isn't always the one you're meant to have. And how lucky I am I found mine. If you've made it this far in my story, thank you. It means more than I can express." I didn't share these memories to relive old pain, but to show that healing is possible even after abandonment, betrayal, and deep emotional scars. If something in my journey resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Whether you've walked a similar road or are just starting to build boundaries for yourself, your voice matters. And your encouragement, it helps more than you know. So please drop a message below, share your thoughts, and if you believe in second chances and chosen families, hit that subscribe button. Your support helps stories like mine reach the people who need them most. To anyone carrying the weight of childhood trauma, let me say this: you don't owe your past a place in your future. You get to decide who belongs in your life. Healing isn't about erasing what happened, it's about reclaiming your power from it. Surround yourself with those who see your worth without conditions. Take the risk to trust, to grow, to become. If I can find my way back from a train station I was left at, so can you from wherever you were left behind.